What is up, everybody? So today's video, we are definitely busy. We still have a lot more to do on this Dodge Dakota RT supercharged project. So if you didn't catch the last video, make sure you check that out. We finally got the supercharger on, we got it running. We have all the intercooler piping done for now. We have the intercooler on the bottom, but we still have a few other things to get this truck ready. So namely the fuel injectors, we have to upgrade those. We have them over there on that bench. We also have to put the SRT4 map sensor in here so that it can read boost. So we'll have to do that, have to do the wiring for that. Also, we have to get the gauges inside the truck and as well hook them up so that we have a boost gauge in there and a wideband O2 sensor as well. Other thing we have to hook up is this vacuum line that runs to our bypass valve. So we got to hook that up over there too. So we got a lot of stuff. Also have to put in that wideband O2 sensor. Let me show you guys some of the stuff over here. So here's all of our wiring. Here's our wideband O2 sensor. Here is our map sensor. So I have two of them, and I'm not gonna tell you why I have two of them, but maybe you guys can guess. Anyways, I have a brand new one in the bag. It's a Mopar genuine part. And I have this one here. So this one actually, fortunately, has a nipple kind of installed into it, whereas this one does not. This is usually the way it comes. So I'm gonna use this one, exact same part number. I'll link that down in the description below if you guys are interested in what I'm using. This is the stock map sensor. And here is the pigtail that plugs in this. So I have two here. And what I'm attempting to do right now, I was just kind of looking at some stuff before I began this video, is I took out the clip here. So you'll see that I removed this white clip from here, because what I'm going to try to do is, rather than cut the wires off, here's the map sensor pigtail here, I'm gonna see if I can unpin it. They look to be very, very similar. So I'm gonna see if I can unclip the pin and just slide it into our new connector. It might make a cleaner install rather than having to cut these and solder them and heat shrink them and all that stuff. So it might save us some time and also be a cleaner install. So anyways, let's get started on that and let's get going. One last thing before we get started. So this is the 2 gauge pillar pod that we're gonna be installing. I'm sure you guys probably wanna see the gauges. So here is our boost gauge. If you guys have been around for a while with the channel and you guys remember the Ram 1500 supercharge project, we have the same gauges. So that's that one. And then here is our wideband O2 sensor. So I love these gauges. I've had to buy these with my own money, but they're the ones I want to go with. Let's go. Well, it doesn't look like we're gonna be able to get that done. So this one is just a tiny bit longer than the factory one. So I guess we'll go back to plan B. We'll cut this so that we can get that on there, because the pin unfortunately won't repin. You can see there it's just a tiny bit longer and just slightly different. So no big deal. We'll go ahead and trim this back and we will attach our wires. On, everything's heat shrinked. Now we can go ahead and plug in our map sensor. We'll put our red locking tab on, and then we can connect our hose. So we still have the air hose from our old map sensor that came off the throttle body, and we'll just reconnect it right there. All right, so the map sensor rewire is done. Now we can move on to the next one, which is going to be for our bypass valve. So there is a spare port right here, which I'm going to connect this to. So I ran my hose in and around underneath, and I have a vacuum line here. So I'm gonna connect it to where we have this blue port right there, and we'll connect it so it has a source. So next up, I removed that plug and it's removed now. And what I'm gonna do, it's not the prettiest thing, honestly. I'm probably gonna maybe upgrade to something fancier, but this will definitely do the job. There's nothing wrong with it, just maybe not as fancy as we would like. But we're gonna put a T here, and we're gonna tee off that, and then from there, we're gonna go to the boost gauge. The other one is gonna go to this bypass valve. So let's go ahead and install that T. Okay, so this isn't going to work out as we planned, which is okay. I had another 90-degree elbow. I tried putting it on, but we run out of room in a hurry over here. So I'm gonna go ahead, there's another port on the back. We'll tee off of that, and we'll just leave this one as one single line that probably goes just to there. So there we have that. So we have our T back here, and it's got these push to connect fittings. If you guys haven't seen the push to connect fittings that I use on pretty much all my builds, they're super cool. They use these hard lines. This is 1/4 inch line, and you just slide it in. If you ever need to service anything, you just hit the little clip and it releases, and I can probably demonstrate that with these. So that's what they look like right there. So it's got that little tab there, and that blue little locking tab is what holds it in place. So I pretty much use them on everything, and then I also use it on the other end of the gauge. So as you can see here, that's it. It has little tiny teeth in there, which you guys can probably see. You just slide it in, it grabs on, and that's it. So we need to run this line, which is the same line I used on the supercharged Ram 1500. We're gonna have to run that from here into the cab and over to where our gauge is gonna sit. Another thing we have to run too is we're gonna have to install our O2 sensor. So this wire will tuck inside the cab, and these two wires are pretty much the only two that are gonna have to go through the firewall at this point. This one's for the boost gauge, that one's for our wideband O2 sensor. So we'll run those through, and then once we get those through, we can work on the next step. So here's what our dual gauge pod is gonna look like here. So we're gonna have to screw this in. I think I'm probably just gonna leave a nice little gap there and put it on. So I'm gonna have to fasten this, and then I'm also gonna have to drill some holes to get my wiring through. So I'll probably drill maybe 1 or 2 holes there to get my wiring through, and we'll figure this out. So let me get a couple screws and we'll fasten this where I want it. So we've got our 1 screw there, and then on the other side I'm gonna put the 2 here because it's gonna be kind of hanging from this side, and you won't see these 2 screws as much as you'll see this one. So I got these black screws, they're self-tappers, so it's pretty cool. I'm just gonna go through like that, and then I'm gonna have to make a couple holes like I was mentioning back here for my wires, and also that line for the boost to come through. So let's get done. So there we are, we got 1, 2, 3. So we got that all sorted out, and it might look like that's not aligned, but that's exactly where the trim fits, the rubber trim. It fits right up against that, so we'll be good there. And then let's make our holes. All right, so there we go. We got our 2 holes for our wires to come through the back side. And if you guys haven't seen these before, these step bits are probably one of the best things I've ever used for making such a hole. They make a clean hole and it kind of deburrs it all at the same time. So they're a pretty good thing to use. So if you guys don't have one of those, I would definitely check it out. Maybe I'll link it below. But anyways, that's that ready to go. So let's drop our gauges in. Well, I was hoping I wasn't gonna have to do this, but it's the same as last time. So these gauges actually are kind of tapered, which I guess it's better to have a snug fit than a loose fit, but you can see I can only push them in so far before they get stuck. So I had to do this on the last Autometer gauge pod that I had. So same thing with this. I'm just gonna have to open it up just slightly with the Dremel on both of them because they're both doing the same thing. All right, so here we go. We have our dual gauge pod installed. I haven't fully seated the gauges yet because I just want to make sure that everything's good so that I don't have to pull them back out, because like you guys know, there's only a hole in the back, so to access the gauge, you'd have to pull them back out. So they're pretty snug fit. We used a fuse tap here to tap into a switched ignition source, and then over here until we get the O2 sensor actually in the exhaust, I just put it over here, so it's probably just gonna show, you know, fully lean condition, but at least it's plugged in. Got all of our extra wiring here so we can make it over there. So we'll go ahead and we'll just put this on just for a second, and we'll see if we turn the key to lease accessory, if we have action on all of our gauges. And there we go. So here's our O2 sensor, here's our boost. Obviously we don't have any boost right now, so we're all set. We can go ahead and put these in, and that's what that's gonna look like. So good stuff. All right guys, next up we're gonna go ahead and raise up the truck and we'll install that O2 sensor and get that done. O2 sensor installed, and the wires run over there, wideband O2 I should say. And then the wire runs up through the fender and up there. So we're done. We'll put the truck back down, but just before we do that, I have to remove this rubber flap. Because this truck is so low, when we put it down on the ground, this rubber flap is literally sweeping the ground. So that was one of the things I mentioned to you guys. We're gonna be redoing this setup. So we'll put a front mount intercooler in here shortly. But for now, I'm just gonna remove this rubber flap. It actually is very functional. It directs the air into this intercooler upwards, but unfortunately we can't run it, so I'm going to just zip it off with some air tools and we'll get that off. Okay, so truck is down on the ground and now we can go ahead and install our fuel injectors. So if you guys haven't been following along, you guys will know that we ordered these fuel injectors. So these are from, I don't know if you guys can read this, Snake Eater Performance. And these are direct plug and play injectors for these, and they are a pretty significant size. So we went big enough that in the future, when we start going a little bit more crazy, maybe do E85 and stuff like that, and a bigger fuel system, these we can still use. So that's the plan. Let's go ahead and open it up. There's my invoice, I believe, and probably a wrapping bubble that used to have air in it. And then let's see here. There should be 8 of them here. Looks like there's 8 boxes. Snake Eater injected. I don't know if the sticker's any good. It looks like it's seen a little bit of heat. This is kind of cool. Snake Eater fuel injected hot sauce. So we got that, and then let's pop open one. Let's take a look. Take a look. If you guys notice, I do have air tools. Finally, I've had them for a while. I just didn't have them here, but I finally got all my stuff. I just didn't feel like buying it all twice. So get out of there. There we go. So that is what they look like. So, ooh, almost dropped it. So there we go. Those are gonna plug and play straight in. So what we're gonna do is we will unclip all of our fuel injectors. So we'll unplug them, and it should be a fairly easy swap. So we'll go ahead, pull those out and get them back in there. All right, so as you can see, we disconnected the 2 bolts. I had to take my bracket off just because one of the bolts is held on by the bracket. We showed all of that install modification to get a stock fuel rail on one of these 4 BBLs on here, and we got it on. So what I'm gonna do now is double check that all your O-rings came with you, because these stock O-rings on the stock injectors we're not gonna be using since the new injectors have their own O-rings. So what we will be doing though is removing these clips. So we might have a bit of fuel in here, which is why I have the rag here. So once we remove this clip, which slides off the back, I'll show you guys like this. Probably be able to do it with one hand. So here's the clip that slides off, as you can see. And once you get that off, then you can wiggle out your fuel injector. Like I said, there's gonna be fuel in the rail, so just be conscious of that. Or if you really wanted to, you could start it, let them run dry, all that fun stuff. But we can't start it at this point, or we're not going to start it. We're just going to do it this way. So we'll wiggle these out and we'll swap these out. Same thing on the top where it connects to the rail. Make sure that your O-ring comes with you and doesn't look like this, because one of the O-rings is stuck in the rail, and we're going to pick it out with this little screwdriver from Whatever It Takes Transmissions. And there's the O-ring that was stuck in the rail. So we're good to go. So here is a side-by-side comparison of the Snake Eater Performance 1000cc injectors. Yes, you guys, these are big injectors. So we got some future plans, and these are definitely going to be more than enough fuel. So those are the 2, and they're both the same length, so we'll be all set on our fuel rail height. So we'll be good to go. And I already have kind of just a little dish of engine oil. You guys can use whatever you want. I like to use something that's not going to harm the engine. A lot of guys will use like Vaseline or all sorts of different stuff. A little bit of engine oil on these to lubricate them going in. And obviously that's not going to harm our injectors or engine. So that's the way I'm doing it. I'm going to go ahead and stick these into the rail, put our clips back on, and then we'll be ready to seat them into the intake manifold. All right, so our injectors are fully seated top and bottom, and I like to put the clip on the injector first, just so that you can just push the injector up into the rail and it clicks on. And one thing I do like to do is use the wood end of a hammer just to kind of sink them down in. So I find that it's a little bit easier than trying to just force it in with your hand, just to kind of give it a little blunt end of the wood on the hammer, but whatever you guys want to do. Anyways, our rail is seated. I'm gonna go ahead and just tighten up the bolts, put our throttle cable bracket back on here, and we can move on to the driver's side. All right, brackets back on, throttle cable, transmission cable, everything's on, including our injector clips. So we are done on this side. Let's go on to the driver's side and do the same thing. Okay guys, so the injectors are now in, everything's done, everything's tight. Only thing I'm gonna do right now is just cycle the key. So I'm gonna put the power back on. I can't start it just yet because we don't have a tune that accommodates those larger style injectors, and also a tune that accommodates the different map sensor. So once we get that sent over from Flying Ryan, then we can go ahead and do all that. But right now I'm just going to cycle the key, build some fuel pressure in the system, make sure we don't have any leaks, and then we'll pretty much wrap it up for today's video, and then we're pretty much waiting for the tune, and then we can get this thing fired up. So let's go ahead and cycle the key quick. I gotta put my positive terminal on the battery. Since we have that off, I still have some sort of battery drain issue that I'm gonna have to figure out, but let's go ahead, just cycle it a few times, build some fuel pressure over here, and we'll just inspect, make sure we don't have any fuel leaks. Okay, so we are good, you guys. No visible fuel leaks out of the fuel rail. We'll double check it once we get started. But as you can see, clean there, no puddles or anything like that. So we should be good for now. Also, one other thing I wanted to mention is if anybody has some spare valve covers, just stock ones, let me know, because I'm kind of getting tired of these Mopar Performance ones. I have brand new Felpro gaskets on them and they seem to want to keep leaking. So I don't really care how it looks at this point. I just want to stop the leaks. But I've tried doing it and it just it pukes out of like strange places, like out of the bolt on the corner there. It's leaking out of that one, both sides with brand new gaskets. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put stock ones on. So if you have a couple laying around, definitely let me know in the comments below or get a hold of me somehow. All right, you guys, so that is it for today's video. We got a lot done and actually kind of extended into the next day, but I just tackled those last couple things separately. So that is it. We're just waiting on a tune, and then we'll be able to fire this thing up and go for some test drives, test runs, do a bunch of data logging, get this thing, or start to get this thing dialed in. It's gonna be a bit of a process getting the whole thing to do what we want, and playing with boost levels, all that stuff, and kind of get it happy. But it's a long road, but it's gonna be a fun one, I guarantee you guys. And going to the track, seeing how it does, fine tuning it, getting it there the next week, all that good stuff. So you guys don't want to miss it. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you give this video a big thumbs up. Also check out down below, we got a bunch of merch, or the join button to support your boy, because we got a lot of projects, and to keep all the fun moving and all the mods coming in, I can use your guys' support. So support your boy. See you on the next video. Take care.